หังกัวิปูชยามะอิมินาสการเรนะธัมมังกัวิปูชยามะอิมินาสการเรนะสังฆังกัวิปูชยามะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธภควาพุทธังภควันตังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตภควตาธัมโมธัมมังนัมสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภควโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามิต่อไปเป็นการพัฒนาศีล5ประการกันมัจยังพันเตวิสุวิสุรักนาทายะติสรณเนนะสหปัญจศีลานิยาจามะทุติยามปิมยังพันเตวิสุวิสุรักนาทายะติสรณเนนะสหปัญจศีลานิยาจามะตาติยามปิมยังพันเตวิสุวิสุรักนาทายะติสรณเนนะสหปัญจศีลานิยาจามะใจเราเป็นนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังสรณังกัจฉามิพุทธังสรณังกัจฉามิธัมมังสรณังกัจฉามิธัมมังสรณังกัจฉามิสังฆังสรณังกัจฉามิสังฆังสรณังกัจฉามิทุติยัมปิพุทธังสรณังกัจฉามิทุติยัมปิพุทธังสรณังกัจฉามิทุติยัมปิธัมมังสรณังกัจฉามิทุติยัมปิธัมมังสรณังกัจฉามิทุติยัมปิสังฆังสรณังกัจฉามิทุติยัมปิสังฆังสรณังกัจฉามิตติยัมปิพุทธังสรณังกัจฉามิตติยัมปิพุทธังสรณังกัจฉามิตติยัมปิธัมมังสรณังกัจฉามิตติยัมปิธัมมังสรณังกัจฉามิตติยัมปิสังฆังสรณังกัจฉามิตติยัมปิสังฆังสรณังกัจฉามิทิสรณกัมมนังนิพพิตังปานาติปาตาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิปานาติปาตาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิอาทินาดานาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิอาทินาดานาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิอาเมสุมิชฌาชราเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิกาเมสุมิชฌาจาราเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิมุสาวาทาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิมุสาวาทาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิสุราเมรยมัจจปมาดฐานาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิสุราเมรยมัจจปมาดฐานาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิอิมานิปัญจสิกขาปทานิสีเลนะสุปฏิญญันติสีเลนะโพธิสัมปทาสีเลนะนิพุทธิญญันติตัสมาสีลังวิโสทะเยต่อไปเป็นการพัฒนาธรรมพรหมาจโลกาทิฏฐิสัมปติการอาชีพที่ว่าอันเดียจักขะสัมพีระสัทธาภาวะชักขะชา
อิกาเทเสตุธรรมาอนุตามปิมังปัสสัง
โอตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ very glad and honoured to be invited to speak, to offer some reflections on Dhamma today at the Royal Embassy, and the presence of His Excellency the Ambassador of the Royal Embassy, and the members of staff from the Embassy of the Republic of Myanmar, and other distinguished guests and visitors today. The theme for the Dhamma talk today, I was requested to come up with a subject, so what came to mind was finding peace in times of conflict, the war in the Ukraine being the most obvious example here in this region of the world at this particular time, and on many people's minds, and having a very strong physical and emotional impact in many ways on the lives, obviously, particularly the people in the Ukraine. The ripples of the effect of that conflict are spreading far and wide. So I thought that would be a good place to bring our attention. Also to, along with the war in Ukraine, not to forget that there are other struggles and conflicts, difficulties in other places around the world that have been going on for many years. Difficulties and distress in the Middle East, in the Far East, in the countries of Africa, the Americas. There's struggle and conflict, difficulty, tension in society in many and various ways around the planet. And so it's not just Ukraine that is the issue, but our human family and our world. And the aim of today's reflections, what I like to offer is the ways of considering how peace can be found, and what do we mean by peace, and also how can we meaningfully bring that into our lives and into the world around us. Whether we have a direct impact upon this current most intense conflict here in Europe, or wherever your responsibilities and your affiliations, your concerns lie around the planet. Considering this theme, it came to mind that there are three principal areas to consider. Firstly, the mind, our inner world, and the realm of our emotions, our attitudes, how we work with the faculty of attention, how we work with our minds, what tools can we use to bring peace within our own mind, and the benefits of that. Also, then the second area is that of speech and communication. That's the primary area of contact between most human beings, is either the spoken word, or the written word, or the recorded word. So to bring attention to the realm of speech, communication. And then lastly, the realm of action, of what we do and how we do it. The work that we undertake in the world, whether we happen to be living in a monastery, or we're working in an embassy, a consulate, different functions and roles that we have in our lives. So I hope that these themes will be useful, and there'll be some time for some questions and responses afterwards. I'll speak for about 45 minutes now, and then we'll have time for discussion following that. So in terms of the mind, and obviously being Buddhist monks, we have a training background in Buddhist meditation, and also in Buddhist teachings, he made it very clear that, as he said a number of times, right view comes first. And right view doesn't mean just seeing things in terms of Buddhist doctrine, but it means having a realistic appreciation of the way that the world works, the way our minds work, the way society works, the way that nature works. So right view comes first. So that with respect to working with the mind, then having an attitude that, say, shifts away from our habitual ego-centered patterns of thinking based around my concerns, my likes, my dislikes, my preferences, my job, my responsibilities. Yes, there are those things, there are those aspects of our lives, but also we are part of a natural order. Our bodies, our minds, these are all part of a natural system. We were born from parents. We have learned languages. We need to breathe air. We need to eat food. We are subject to the force of gravity, and we live in the human family. So, in terms of establishing a skillful attitude in our own minds, to recognize, first of all, the habits we have of self-centered thinking, to recognize those, to acknowledge those, and then to do what we can to change the view to a more, as in our Buddhist terminology, we would say a Dhamma-centered perspective, or you could say a nature-centered perspective, so that we're shifting the view from me at the very center, me and my life, my preferences, my conditioning at the center, to, say, attuning the mind to the way that nature works, the natural order of things, and so that we are, say, in that way, much more able to appreciate the living system that we're a part of, the people that we work with, the aspects of society that we are involved with. So one of the principal tools in terms of establishing that quality of view, a way of seeing and working in the world, is to be paying attention to the reality of the present. Most of us who have active lives, we have a lot of communication to do, we have a lot of responsibilities. I have a list of things to do myself. I'm a Buddhist monk. I'm the Abbot of a monastery. I'm on about 20 different committees, which all have agendas and minutes. And so I have to process a lot of information, do a lot of communication during the course of a day. So it's very easy for our attention to be scattered, to be drawn off into memories of the past, planning for the future, creating anxiety about the present. Say, with respect to the situation in the Ukraine and the rising cost of living, the impact of social unrest and economic uncertainty, these can bring a lot of anxiety. And so the mind is very easily drawn away from the reality of the present and is caught up in agitated thinking. So, in terms of finding peace in times of conflict and working with the mind, I realise that not everyone here has a Buddhist background or is familiar with Buddhist teachings, and I would certainly say that I don't offer these suggestions in order to make anyone Buddhist who isn't of this faith already, but the basic practices of Buddhist meditation really, I would say, are applicable to all human beings, irrespective of our faith, our nationality, social conditioning, and religious affiliation, because it's about bringing attention to the present. And one of the principal tools that we have for that is what we call mindfulness of breathing. So we can, during the course of the day, I like to encourage what I call micro-meditations. In a perfect world, people would take a period of time, say 20 minutes or 30 minutes at the beginning and the end of a day, to sit quietly, to close your eyes, to bring the attention inwards, to establish a posture that is upright, that is alert, encouraging energy and wakefulness, but also having established that quality of energy and wakefulness, then to relax the mind, relax the body in a full and complete way. So I appreciate that people have a lot of responsibilities. I'm sure you have very full schedules, both the people who are here and those who are listening and watching this over Facebook Live, which is, I believe, happening as I speak. So we might feel like, oh, I can't spare 20 minutes at the beginning and the end of the day. You can't believe my schedule. But all of us can find a few seconds here and there throughout the course of the day. So if you have, say, some time to say, develop a degree of skill, or a degree of familiarity with meditation, to say take a few minutes, if you can, or just a few seconds throughout the day, 4 or 5 times, 5 or 10 times, to just stop for 5 seconds. And it's astonishing how long 5 seconds can be when you just be still, to bring attention into the body, to stand upright or sit upright, to relax the muscles of the body, to bring your attention to your breath, and just do nothing else except pay attention to the present moment. And when we do that, then the mind is attuned to the reality of the here and now. No matter how important our jobs are, no matter how high level our involvement is, every one of us can afford a chunk of 5 seconds a few times a day. If you can't find 5 seconds, then you're really in trouble. So we can do that. And to just stop, be still, before a meeting, after a meeting, when you're by yourself, just to stop, be still, bring attention to the body, to the breath, focus the attention. So that becomes a standard thing that we do. We bring attention to this moment. What is the mind feeling like right now? What am I carrying around? What is the mood of this moment? So that is a basic training in mindfulness and attention, paying attention to the present, because the present moment is where life actually happens. Samuel Johnson, a famous writer and philosopher of the 18th century, said life is something that happens while we're busy attending to other things. We ignore our own life because we're busy with the past, with the future, with our mental preparations. So if we want to really be present for our own life, then we need to pay attention to this moment. So this simple exercise in mindfulness and bringing attention to the experience of the present several times during the day is a simple exercise in that. Again, in a perfect world, you would find 20 minutes or half an hour at the beginning of the day, the end of the day, to just be still, to focus the attention, to say, let the thoughts that are forming in your mind, the emotions that are there, to be fully known, to be aware of those, and to recognize this is a pattern of thinking, this is a wave of emotion. That's what this is. As a support for that, one of the practices that I like to do and I find extremely helpful, being in the role of abbot of a monastery, but also when I'm traveling or in the midst of any activity, is even if you're not stopping and being still, even as you're going along, or you're in the middle of a meeting, you're in the middle of a conversation, to bring attention to what is the mood of this moment, what's the attitude? Are you feeling tense? Are you wanting to get out of this meeting to get on to the next thing? Are you really enjoying what's going on? Are you having a very delightful time being with your friends? Is it a delicious meal? Or is it a really challenging argument that you're in the middle of? What's going on? How do you feel? And so in that, this I would call this mindfulness of feeling. You're not making any kind of value judgment about the mood. If you're feeling angry, or you're feeling agitated, or whether you're feeling peaceful and happy, at that moment, in this development of mindfulness and awareness and establishing clarity and peace, it's just knowing, oh, here's an angry feeling, it feels like this. Here's an agitated feeling, it feels like this. Here's a happy feeling. This is this food is really delicious feeling. That's what this is. Well, this is a terrible argument. I don't know how to settle this. I don't know what to say that will make this all right. Feeling. That's what this is. And it might seem a bit superficial, or you might hear that and think, well, how's that going to help? But I use this practice a lot, and it's extraordinarily, say, effective in giving a little bit of extra space. So even when you're in the middle of a situation where it's like, oh my goodness, they're asking me to solve this problem. Many of you have
or responsibilities. They're asking me to solve this problem and I don't know what to do with it. That's what this is the I don't know what to do with this problem feeling. That's what this is. There's a little bit more mental space around that, and that little bit of extra space enables our intuitive wisdom to function. We have a bit more of the capacity to attune to the situation, having let go of ego-centered concerns, attuning to the situation as it is, and we often find a way forward with a difficult situation that we couldn't see before. Or if it's something that's very enjoyable, you're delighting in, rather than thinking, oh, this is fantastic, this is great, this is just what I wanted, and getting lost in that happy feeling, to make a note that this is the feeling of having got exactly what I wanted. It feels this way. So you don't get drunk on that happy feeling, or that success, like, yes, that's exactly how I wanted it to come out. It's still delightful, it's still pleasant, but you're not lost in that pleasantness. So there's an integration, there's a balanced quality that is sustained in the way that we are, the flow of emotions, the way that we're relating to the flow of experience during the course of the day. In terms of the mind, then another related aspect is what we call, and I've made some reference to this already, conceptual proliferation. When people talk about proliferation in the political world, they're usually talking about nuclear proliferation. This is conceptual proliferation. The mind running away with its thoughts and getting lost in its projections. And the Lord Buddha in his teachings pointed out that it's because of getting lost in our trains of thought, in our fantasies, our imagination, our anxieties, that this is what causes people to take up weapons to conflict with each other, and is a cause of argument and conflict in the world. In what's called the Madhu Pindaka Sutta, the Honeyball Sutta in the Middle Length Discourses. This is the comment that is made by the Lord Buddha, that it's because of getting drawn into our own anxieties, our own opinions, our own judgments, and then grasping hold of those, we find ourselves in conflict with others because the opinions, the judgments, the preferences of others don't match ours. And then because we are clinging tightly to our perspective, we find ourselves opposed to and in conflict and in a state of tension and or even war with others because of them also grasping their views and getting lost in their own trains of thought. So, when you find your mind getting carried away in a train of thinking, lost in your worries and what about this? If this happens, if this happens, if this happens, and then, and then, and then, and then. When you, I'm not reading anybody's mind. You're thinking, how did you know that my mind does that? Almost everybody's mind does that. That's how our minds tend to work, as Buddha pointed out so many years ago. So if we have, again, established a quality of mindfulness, noticing I'm getting lost in mental proliferation. So let's see, where did that come from? What was the cause of that? Oh, I was scrolling through the news on my tablet, and I saw this headline. And then, having seen the wording of that headline, then my mind took off, and I arrived at this state of anxiety or feeling of hatred or fear on account of that. It began with seeing those words. It was just seeing, reading those words. That's where it began. So, in many ways, if we are able to mindfully catch where our attention has wandered, where we got lost, follow it back to its root. Often, the closer to the origin you get, it was just a sound that we heard, or something that we saw, or something that we smelled, or we felt. Then we find that it's very, very simple and a lot more tangible, and we can recognize, oh, my mind created that whole story, that whole anxiety, that whole worry, that whole big problem out of just seeing the news in the headline. I didn't even read the article. It was just the words of the headline. Boom, off my mind went. And so this is a very helpful skill. It takes a bit of mindfulness to notice that we've got lost, but then to follow it back and to recognize, oh, it was just hearing that particular bird. It reminded me of a bird where I used to live in a different country, or that colour of that person's jacket. Oh, I used to have a jacket like that. And reminds us of an aspect of our own past. Bringing it back to its root, it gets much more simple and less complicated and less conflicted. Now, maybe the last thing to speak about in terms of working with our own mind and establishing peace within is the quality of loving kindness. Metta in Buddhist practice means loving kindness, and it has both a receptive aspect and an expressive one. So when we talk about having metta, we talk about spreading loving kindness. Spreading loving kindness like a bright light radiating from our heart, wishing well to all beings, to ourselves and to other beings. But along with that expressive or outgoing aspect of metta, there's also a receptive quality, and what I like to call radical acceptance. And this is a theme that Venerable Ajahn Sumedho has stressed many times over the years, that the loving kindness doesn't mean trying to make ourselves like everything. It's loving things in terms of metta is not the same as liking. You can have metta for something which is completely unlikable. Somebody who's criticizing you, or somebody who wishes you harm. You can't like that, or if you've got a serious illness, you've got a migraine for 2 days. You can't like that, but you can accept. This is part of my experience in this moment. I have a body, I have a mind, and so the illness can happen. So here it is, there's this painful headache. Or it's impossible that everyone would agree with me, everyone would like me. So every so often I'm going to have to work with somebody who doesn't like me, or doesn't agree with me, or wishes me ill. You don't have to make yourself enjoy that, or kind of sugar that over, as we would say in English expression. Or as Nopo Sumedho would put it, we don't have to think pink to kind of pretend that we like the unlikable, but rather this is a bitter experience. It tastes like this, it's bitter. This is a painful experience, it's painful. But we don't have to add anything to that. So that is, I feel, the most important aspect of loving kindness is that radical acceptance, recognizing everything belongs. It doesn't mean that you approve. So if people acting immorally or unkindly or cruelly, you're not approving of it, but you're saying like people acting in a violent way. You're not approving of violence, but you're recognizing violence is part of nature. It's not wholesome, it's not helpful, but it happens. It's part of the natural order. So the mind isn't adding an attitude of wrongness, or it shouldn't be this way, of resentment. There's an appreciation. This is part of nature. If it's followed, then there's a lot of suffering that comes from that. So it needs to be worked with. But if we don't have that quality of acceptance, of that receptive aspect of metta, then we are finding ourselves repressing that. It shouldn't be this way, that's bad, it's wrong, I hate it. And as the Buddha said in the Dhammapada, hatred is never ended by hatred. Hatred is only ever ended by love. This is a law, ancient and inexhaustible. The fifth verse of the Dhammapada, very famous teaching of the Lord Buddha. So that's not just hatred towards other beings, it's hatred towards our own mind states. So if we are feeling regretful or jealous or angry, then we can feel self-critical, but it's not saying you approve of your angry feelings or your jealousy and say, oh, my jealousy is wonderful and beautiful. No, it's not. It's unskillful, it's a painful state. But here it is. It arises. Our competitiveness or our self-centeredness. We're not saying that we like it or that it's good, but here it is. And that quality of metta, again, gives a bit of extra space, a little psychological space around those unskillful qualities, and helps the heart to not act on those. And the skillful qualities that are recognized, that we receive and also acknowledge, kindness, compassion, generosity, wisdom, then recognize, oh, this is beautiful, this is noble, this is beneficial, this is wholesome, therefore act on this. Then going on to the next section of this considerations of finding peace in times of conflict, that the aspect of speech is very important, communication. when you look at the Vinaya discipline, the monastic rule, I was giving the instruction in the Vinaya one year at Amaravati Monastery many years ago, about 20 years ago, and I realized that 3/4 of the Vinaya rules can be broken through speech alone. So, which is kind of remarkable. 75% of our rules can be broken just through what we say and how we say it. So, I think it's important to recognize the primary mode that we function in relationship to each other as human beings is through speech, and that so bringing attention, bringing mindfulness to speech is very, very helpful. So in terms of finding peace, you might think, well, how is speech related to that? But just as with finding peace, in terms of working with our mind, it's a lot to do with attitude, a lot to do with focus, and a lot to do with a receptive and, say, nature-centered attitude. In terms of speech, again, it's a lot to do with letting go of self-centered habits. So, for example, when, again, I have a lot of responsibilities in terms of administration. If I'm talking to, say, Tandu or Tambalada, these other good monks who are here with me today, and I'm just focused on the issue, the thing we need to discuss, and I've forgotten them as an individual, what their background is, what their mood might be, where they come from, what they're interested in, what their other concerns are. If I'm just talking to the issue, and I forget the person, then I can really easily be out of harmony with them and with the situation, and it can lead to, again, misunderstanding, conflict, and difficulty. So, in terms of establishing peace or finding peace and looking at the realm of speech, when you're talking with someone, whether it's in a formal meeting or just with your spouse over the breakfast table or someone at the ticket desk when you go to the museum or whatever, to be meeting the person and not just meeting the issue. But the issue is there, you want to buy a ticket or you need to talk with your spouse about what to do today and so on. You need to sort out the business of the monastery. But the issue is there, but you're meeting the whole person, not just the issue. So that you're expanding the view from what you need. Many years ago, I lived at Amaravati Monastery. I was a monastery secretary, and it came to the point where I was involved in so many different things, and had so many responsibilities. I came to dread the sound of my own name. Because as soon as I heard Amaro, I was like, ooh, another thing for me to do. That people would see me as the guy who gets things done, the person who's supposed to make, I want something to happen, so I go to Amaro to see if I can get it to happen. And so I began to contemplate this back in those days, or how, again, in that role of being an organizer, looking after the administration, or looking after the work around the monastery, I said, ooh, carpenter, ooh, this one is good with water, or this one's really good at writing letters. And everything else about that person, why they came into the monastery, why they took on roles, why they shaved their head, that's gone, because I need a carpenter. And I thought, this is a really unskillful way to operate. Yes, they're good at carpentry, but that's not all and everything that they are. So to talk to the whole being, rather than just the issue. And this might be very familiar territory, and this is people who are in the diplomatic service, so this is probably the kind of thing you'll talk very, very early on, but I do think it's worth underscoring, and it's very much a part of establishing clear and peaceful and well-integrated relationships. Similarly, when you're in a conversation, either in a formal meeting or in an informal discussion, whatever it might be, one of the key things to communication is listening. If you've received a letter, read the whole letter. If you're talking to someone, don't just be waiting for a gap in their flow so you can jump in and continue your flow. they'll probably be doing the same thing. So then you don't have a dialogue, you have two monologues that are just passing by each other. There's no real communication. So in order to establish well-integrated communication, to have a hope for peace and clarity in the work that you do and in your relationships, then we need to listen. Another aspect of the realm of speech, the Buddha gave quite a bit of advice around skillful speech. And he, in one particular sutta, he talked about the criteria that he used in choosing what he said and how he said it. And so the three say criteria are whether it's true or not true, whether it's useful or not useful, and whether it's pleasant to hear or unpleasant to hear. I hope it doesn't sound too complicated. The Buddha was very good at making lists. This is one of those lists. So he said if it's not true, he would never say it. If it's not useful, he would never say it. So those two things have to be in place. It needs to be true, and it needs to be useful. And then with respect to whether it's pleasant to hear, like you're praising someone, or you're telling them that you're going to raise their wages, or that you are, it's unpleasant to hear that you're going to have to let them go, or the wages are going to be reduced. That, as it says in that sutta, that the Tathagata knows the right time to say such things. And so even unpleasant things that are painful to hear, like we can't afford to keep paying you this much. Again, I'm not employing any kind of psychic powers in case any wage reductions are in the air. I hope not. But, the point is that the Buddha says you choose the right time and the right way to put those things. So you shouldn't be afraid of saying things that are painful to others. And again, as in the role of responsibility in the monastery, I have to say no to a lot of people. People say, can you come and do this? Can you do that? Or can we spend this money on this? And I have to say no. But you choose the right words and the right time and the right way to say it. So that is helpful to bear in mind in terms of communications. To consider, is it true? Is it useful? And to be leaving it aside if it's not true, if it's not useful, and then choosing the right moment and the right words to express whether it's pleasant to hear or painful to hear. Another set of criteria or the qualities that the Buddha talked about is when we want to give negative feedback or criticism to someone. Again, many of you are in roles of responsibility, and they've gathered here at the Royal Thai Embassy today, or listening to this over Facebook Live. The giving of negative feedback or criticism is not something that is pleasant to do for most of us. So the Buddha very helpfully outlined 5 things to bear in mind. First of all, to establish an attitude of loving kindness within yourself. That you're giving this criticism or you're giving this negative feedback, not because you want someone to be different so that you'll be happy, but you're giving them a negative feedback or criticism so that they will be able to function better. They will be able to work and live more comfortably and more beneficially in their role in their life. So there needs to be a heart that's free of bitterness or aversion or irritation or just restlessness, agitation, rather establishing an attitude of loving kindness. You need to, wherever possible, choose the right time to have the conversation, rather than having a difficult conversation where you're standing next to each other at the coffee station. Choose a quiet moment so where you can have a proper talk, you can have a free exchange. Also, you ask permission. And maybe it doesn't really work so much in the working world, but in the monastery, even if I'm the abbot, I should say to Amaro, there's something I'd like to bring up with you. Is that okay? He might say, with all due respect, not today, Ajahn. And then it's my duty to say, okay, not today. Not that he would put words into his mouth, but that's you have to ask permission. And the person has to say, okay, I'm ready for a conversation like that. Or can we talk tomorrow? Or can we talk next week? Then to speak according to the facts rather than hearsay, rather than I have heard that or somebody told me that. You say you check your facts as fully as possible, and don't make assumptions just on hearsay or partial information. So if someone comes to me and says, Ajahn, I can't believe it, this junior monk has done such and such. So, okay, I hear what you're saying. Let's ask around and find out whether it actually happened that way. Let's make sure I got as much information as possible so that you're informed rather than just coming from a reactive place, so that you make the effort to speak according to the facts as well as they can be established, rather than just on supposition, on hearsay, or really in a reactive mode. And when we take the trouble to do this, again, it's employing mindfulness and bringing attention to the present, noticing what you're feeling. Someone says there's something that, Ajahn, I can't believe that they've just done such and such at this monastery in Australia. What? How could they do that? And then I can notice that feeling. Oh, that set off a charge. Okay, let's be aware of that. Let's be some space around that. Okay, let's find out some more about that. Let's not just react, but rather let there be some space around us, some mental room, some psychological space, and so then we can respond from a place of mindfulness and wisdom rather than reacting from self-centeredness and habit. So then the other of these criteria with respect to giving feedback is, am I free of the same fault myself? If I'm criticizing someone for always being late for meetings, how do I do? What's the standard that I set? Yeah. And when I talk about this, people have said, Ajahn, exactly how free do we have to be? If I want to criticize someone for their angry attitude, does it have to be that I never ever get angry for any reason? Can we negotiate that one? So I think to at least acknowledge, okay, I have a difficulty in that area myself, but still it's useful this person is giving feedback. So I feel in terms of establishing skillful communications, bringing thoughtfulness, mindfulness to the way we speak, the emails we write, the letters we write, the communications we need to put into being, these are all very, very important. The third area, going on to action, and our work in the world. So the three areas of where we can establish peace in times of conflict, is to consider the work we do and how we do it, and our attitude towards the actions that we take in the world. Now, again, as a Buddhist monk, there's inner peace and there's outer peace, and naturally our domain is much more on the inner peace side of things. We are forbidden to enter into politics. We don't engage, we don't vote, we don't engage in political side taking. So we're not really in that domain. But the fact is that we do exist as part of the world. We also are affected by what goes on in the world. So we don't take sides politically, but we're conscious of how our attitudes and our understanding, our way of operating in the world affects other people, and the way others act affects us. So in terms of action, then one of the first things to consider is again, I can't assume with respect to all the work that you all do, is to be guiding our actions based on a fundamental ethic of well-being. To say what is going to be for the greatest well-being, and I think that translates across cultures, across countries, across religious dispositions. What can I do in the work that I have? It's giving this Dhamma talk. What can I do that will be for the best for the greatest number of people and the greatest well-being of the planet and all the beings of this planet in general. How can I operate that will lead towards the greatest quality of well-being and social integration? Then, with respect to that, again, to go back to the issue of ego-centered thinking, that we get very focused on wanting to succeed and fearing failure. And I can speak from my own background that I grew up as a very competitive person. I always liked to be first, or to be chosen for the team, or to be winning, and like to come top in the class, get good marks, and wanting to be the top, the best, and so on. So we can be very focused on success, and failure can be taken as an absolute bad or wrong. And I feel it's in terms of our work and being able to function effectively, whatever the domain of our activity is, to change the attitude that we have towards success and failure, and to not let it be an egotistical thing to the degree possible. Again, mindfulness and paying attention to our moods and our attitudes is all part of that. Just to see how much I want to succeed, I want this to work, this has got to go in this way. And you kind of lost sight of the actual project or the issue because it's got my name on it, so it's got to succeed. And it's become the most important thing because it's mine. It's got my name on it. So you can't just snap your fingers and not think that way. None of us can, obviously. But we can at least notice that habit and recognize this is not skillful, this isn't helpful, can this be changed? So with respect to success and failure, if we let go of those ego-centered habits and rather consider that, well, we're faced with a particular situation, okay, I've got a certain responsibility here, I'm being asked to make some decisions or give some guidance, okay, what looks like the best way forward? Rather than, I'm going to go this way, it's got to work, and then feeling afraid that it's not going to work, and forcing it to go in a certain direction because that's what you've decided, it's got your name on it. Rather, to let go of those ego-centered habits, say, this looks like a good way forward, let's try this and see what happens. You're paying attention, you know you care, your heart is in it, but you're not tying your ego to it in that way, so that you're prepared to work hard and give a direction. But if it turns out that that was the choices that were made didn't take into account other factors, you didn't realize the inflation rate was going to go quite that high. And we've got a large building project going on at Amaravati, and we got a large surprise at the beginning of April when the inflation rates went up. I won't bore you with the details, but we didn't quite take account for that. Okay, well, is that within the scope of what we decided? Can we carry on with that? So we had to do a lot of thinking and considering. Okay, does this still not look like a good way forward? Do we have to radically change? And so I'm not trying to boast or anything, but I feel it's a good example of the collective wisdom of our group, that it wasn't an egotistical thing that someone said, "Oh, we decided to do it, we've got to go ahead regardless." It was like, well, no, things have changed, the landscape has changed. The supply of building materials is getting uncertain, the inflation rate is rising. Okay, is this a good way forward? Do we need to change? And the more that those decisions can be based on what's going to be a benefit, what is workable, what's pragmatic, rather than what suits my, it looks good for me, or it fits my ego-centered program, then we can find ways of working that are very helpful and effective. Similarly, if you make a choice and things go really well, rather than hooray, that was really good, everyone thinks I'm a great success, look at me, I'm wonderful. But, well, that one worked. Okay, duly noted. Let's not get carried away with that. So we can learn that turned out in a good way. So what looks like a good way forward from here? So when there's success or things go well or you get praise, you don't get drunk on that, but you don't take that praise as an absolute good. I'm sure many people here you've had a promotion, or you've had some project accepted, or oh, you've been praised, and you thought, yes, and you were celebrating. It was a big day, and you were so happy. And then 5-10 years later, you look back and you think, I can't believe I was celebrating. Little did I know what I was getting myself into. But sometimes we can make all kinds of assumptions around things that happen to feel really wonderful, beneficial, and good at the time, but they bring all kinds of riders with them, all kinds of complications and extra issues. I remember when I was living in the USA up until about 10-12 years ago, a woman who came to the monastery said that she was part of a writer's circle, and they were all people writing fiction and hoping to get published, and they had a really wonderful time together. They would write stories, reading to each other, and they had a very fertile and sort of enjoyable little group. And she said, then my novel got accepted, and I got a big advance from the publishers, and that completely ruined the friendship. Everyone in the rest of the group, I was so happy that finally one of us got published, and then it turned the whole thing sour. Suddenly it's like, oh, it's all right for you. You're a big famous author now. And she said, I can't believe it. We were such good friends. But then it seemed like finally one of us got what we wanted, and it all went well, but I didn't see that coming. So that's just one example. And I think all of us can see that. So when things go well, to change the attitude to okay, that's sweet and delightful. What can we learn from this? What looks like a good way forward from here? In terms of our basic relationship to conduct in Buddhist tradition, then we speak of the 5 precepts. We began today with taking the refuges and the precepts, and these really, in particular, taking the refuges, in refuge in Buddha, in the Dhamma, and in the Sangha. This is a formalized way of, say, establishing the kind of attitudes I've been talking about this afternoon. To take refuge in the Buddha doesn't just mean to look towards the great sage Gautama Buddha as our revered teacher, but my teachers in Thailand and in this tradition would say that the Buddha quality, that awake, aware quality, Buddha means, Buddhi is awake, aware attribute of the heart. To take refuge in the Buddha is to choose to be awake, to choose to be aware, rather than being on automatic pilot. So to take refuge in the Buddha is to revere the great sage who lived 2,500 years ago, and to be taken as our great teacher. But more close to home, it's in this moment, choosing to be aware, choosing to be awake. To take refuge in Dhamma is not just to trust in the words of the Lord Buddha and take those as our guide and our principles for living, but Dhamma also means nature, the reality of the way things are. So to take refuge in Dhamma is to establish that sort of nature-centered thinking, or reality-centered thinking, rather than self-centered thinking. So to take refuge in Dhamma is not partisan. Again, it crosses boundaries, crosses religions, crosses the cultures across the world. Is to choose to be realistic, essentially, to live in harmony with reality, with nature, rather than being, say, focused on my preferences and my expectations and habits. To take refuge in Sangha, again, doesn't just mean to look to the disciples of the Lord Buddha as spiritual guides and Kalyana as spiritual friends, but Sangha literally means the unified assembly, that which is together in an integrated fashion, that which is held together. And what holds us together as a human family, I would say, is the love of the good. That as an internal quality, then, taking refuge in Sangha is, and this is challenging for all of us, to choose to listen to that voice in the heart that loves the good, that recognizes fear and jealousy and aggression, aversion, greediness, recognizes those, turns away. It recognizes wisdom, kindness, compassion, generosity, and it turns towards those. So taking refuge in Sangha is making the effort to choose the good. So in terms of finding peace in times of conflict, then taking the 5 precepts as our guide is a way of, if we choose to be awake, if we choose to be in tune with reality, if we choose to listen to that voice in the heart that loves the good, then we will decline, we will not take life of any living thing, we will not steal anything that doesn't belong to us, we won't engage in sexual misconduct, we won't tell lies, and we will avoid using intoxicants. So we can pay more full and complete attention to the present reality and live in a more integrated and attuned way with that. Going back a little bit to the aspect of success and failure, I didn't realize quite the degree to which I was obsessed with always succeeding when I first came into the monastery. And I thought, well, I'm a spiritual person, I've left all that behind. But my competitiveness managed to come into the monastery with me. So I wanted to be the best monk, and so that I wanted to do everything in the best way, most impressive and substantial way. It was exactly how the perfect monk should be. I tried to live that way. And I'd already been in robes. I'd been a monk for 6 or 7 years before I realized I'm terrified of failure. I want to be approved of by everyone. I'm trying to be this perfect monk. I've got this ideal, I put this ideal of the perfect monk at the center of my life, and I'm trying to inhabit that created ideal. I'm trying to sort of climb inside a Buddha image. Really uncomfortable, not very worthwhile. And so what I realized was that I was very afraid of failure. I always wanted to succeed. And as I noticed that, and I was carrying out that same kind of practices that I was describing earlier, just noticing that I want to be praised. I want to succeed. I'm afraid of failure. This is the fear of losing, of being criticized. That's what this is. And I was, over a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, I was able to change the attitude. And one of the things that I used during that time to try and shift the attitude to being more pragmatic, practical, rather than idealistic, rather than trying to be the perfect monk all the time, was to trust that I was doing my best, and that whether people approved it or not, whatever they said, then I cared and I was doing my best. So I used to say to myself, just do what you do and let the world make of it what it will. And when I first had that thought, something in me went, no. You really want everyone to praise you to be a success. And I thought, no, that kind of desperation in my mind was an indication of, right, this is definitely something that needs to be worked with. So I used that as a kind of mantra. Just do what you do and let the world make of it what it will. Not because I was just trying to be obstinate and self-centered, but rather don't be moved by praise and blame. Just learn from the successful and the unsuccessful. Learn from that. Do your best. Some people will like it, some people will dislike it, most won't even notice. And it took a lot of effort to do, but I found it was a very, very helpful way to change the attitude and to be able to function and to really make working a peaceful process rather than being in a state of anxiety that the work was not enough, I wasn't trying hard enough, I couldn't help enough, I wasn't doing enough to relieve the suffering of others. I trusted that I cared. Yeah, I do care. If I could do more, I would do more, but this is what I can do. And then to have a much more relaxed and natural approach. And mysteriously, even though one is less sort of uptight, wound up and tense about it, I found that I could actually work more effectively and more agreeably. And I've often mentioned how during that time, one of my brother monks said to me, you know, you're much easier to live with since you stopped trying to be perfect. So I wasn't sure whether to be insulted or to be praised, or how to take that, but it was meant as a friendly gesture, friendly, helpful, supportive comment. So in terms of working effectively in the world, the actions that we take, I would suggest that trusting that you care, trusting that you know your job, you do your best, and if you're getting things wrong, you'll find out, and you do your best to change that. And if things are going well, then you can rejoice in that, but don't get carried away with it. And then that embodies the quality of peace in the way that we're interacting, the way that we're working, and our peacefulness within us and the integrity with which we operate, and that has a ripple effect. Has a ripple effect. The people that we're working with, the people we communicate with, the people who look at us and take our lives as an example. So these are a few reflections this afternoon, and I hope there is some of this which is beneficial. Please, whatever is useful, take it with you, and whatever is not useful, please leave it aside. We've got time for some questions and discussion now for a little while. Yeah. Please don't be shy. Sadhu, 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 no. Pepperoni. Yes, So, do you have any questions now? Possibly a bit shy, but I produced a lot of words and see that everything that I said is clear or totally relevant. There's probably things I missed out, areas that are of great concern that people would like answered about. So please don't be shy.
Yes, Your Holiness. I came in a bit late and I'm really apologetic to everybody in this room, but it was just so unavoidable. But I came in at the point when you were talking about ego. And I know that one of the first things that one understands when one is studying the teachings of the Lord Buddha is that the ego is something that must be overcome. And I've made that a part of my life because in government service, I've always reminded myself that my work is service. And I keep underlining that whenever I'm talking to younger colleagues who are coming up or who are working with me. And very often I remind people that please do things because it's the right way to do it and not because of the reward, which is also in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna's message which is in the Bhagavad Gita. So I'm only mentioning all this background because I want to say that ego is so much in play right now in the world, whether it is diplomats or politicians. You come together in a room, which is a more powerful country, which is the senior diplomat, which is the country that is the objective of the discussions at that moment. And I really feel that more than the logic and more than the rationale, or more than doing what is in principle the right thing to do, there's so much else in the atmosphere which all has to do with ego. And really, this is something on which maybe you've already discussed this before I came in, and if you have, my apologies for that. But if there is, in one sentence, something that we all could do to help that situation in our daily work, that would be our very, very important takeaway. So thank you very much.
So I addressed that a little bit in various different ways through what I was saying, but it's an essential point. And I was saying how that sometimes we are responsible for an area of activity or a project, and the actuality of what we're doing becomes less important than the fact that it's got my name on it. But I feel you're absolutely correct that it becomes a dominant feature. I would say that if we can be an example of the alternative, then that has its own effect. So that if by the way that we operate, the way that we act, the choices we make, the way we speak, the way we relate to the people around us, then that has its effect. So that if you are, say, in a high position and you have a lot of ranks and titles and such like, but you always make sure that you have a friendly word with the car driver, or that or you notice that one of the cooks is under the weather, or her family tragedy. People know that that she's got time to help out, to have a friendly word with the driver and recognise the driver is the most important person in the car.
Yes.
I said that to our driver yesterday. So Chris, who was driving us today, he also took us on a trip yesterday. I said, the driver is the most important person, irrespective of rank.
Yes.
So that has its power. That communicates itself, not just to that individual, the cook that you're giving time off because they've got a family tragedy, or that other person, but it spreads. Oh, yeah, this is how he operates. This is how she operates. She's always got time for everybody. They've got a senior position, but they relate on a human level, and that's the priority. And one of the things I was saying earlier was how, when we're having conversations, it's very easy to get focused on the issue. Like, I need a carpenter, or I need someone to write a letter, so that you become, the letter writer or the carpenter. It's also, you can talk to the rank, like, it's just a driver, or it's just a junior monk, or just a novice, or just a junior nun, and that just is deadly. But no, we are human beings sharing this life together.
Yes.
And at this moment, then I'm in this role, you're in that role, but it's snakes and ladders, which is the ancient Indian origins, that you can be high up and then on the board, and then sit down a snake, and then you're way down the bottom.
Yes.
Very shortly. So that, just with the precarious nature of our health, all of us, we can be very senior, important, high-ranking person. You get a stroke, and then suddenly you're in a hospital bed. And you're not in that role anymore. That's over because of the damage done by the illness. So I feel that's also one of the important aspects of our lives. I didn't bring it into the picture yet, but in terms of letting go of ego-centered thinking within ourselves, one of the most powerful tools for that is the reflection on impermanence and uncertainty. And that is, in a way, the gateway to wisdom in terms of Buddhist philosophy. And our teacher, Venerable Ajahn Chah, would emphasize that. So this is the entry point of wisdom, is to remember everything is uncertain, so that you're not reflecting on that to create more anxiety, but you're training the mind to see things in a realistic way, to not make presumptions, and to develop a fundamental quality of respect for your fellow beings. So that, and then I wouldn't underestimate the power of simple acts of kindness and respectfulness. Just taking the trouble. His Holiness the Dalai Lama was a very, very good example. I've got a little photograph of him from Dharamsala. Stop hitting the microphone. There's a very beautiful photograph of him touching the hand of an Indian soldier who's standing guard with his rifle, one of his protection team. And His Holiness is just sort of reaching out and touching his hand as he's passing by the soldier. Thank you for doing your job. You're carrying a gun, you're a soldier, that's your job. But we are in this together as human beings. And I made a point of keeping that picture because it's in the Tibetan Buddhist world and also in the respect of the human community. He's very, very highly regarded. He's a head of state of Tibet, technically, and head of the Buddhist religion within the Tibetan community, and a very, very senior person. But to have that time and the care to touch the hand of the soldier as he's passing by, saying, you belong, you're not forgotten, we're in this together, here we are. And those gestures have strength, they have power. The more that we can genuinely, that those come from the heart, then that helps to spread through the system. And at the other end of the scale, the ones who are sort of, I'm senior to you, my country's more important than yours, I'm coming to the front, thank you very much, get out of my way. Then there's a sort of, okay, please, take as much room as you like. You're welcome to be that way, and you're welcome to hold that attitude, but people will see you for holding that attitude. People will recognize them. That if you being the senior person and ignoring the others, it will be about your name and your persona, that also becomes known about. That has its message. And so then, I would say in the eyes of good-hearted people, wise people, then they're going to be more trusting and appreciative of the company of those who are respectful and caring for others than the ones who want to be the up at the top of the list. But unfortunately, you can't just stop being egotistical by the snap of the fingers. But I would say the first part of that is recognizing those habits as they arise. As I was saying at the end of the talk, I'd already been a monk for 6 or 7 years before I realized I was very focused on succeeding and kind of being a competitive monk. But that's ridiculous. This is not a competition. That's absurd. Yeah, like it's utterly ridiculous. But that was a habit that was deeply entrenched. So recognizing the habit first of all, and not to build up a lot of self-criticism around that. Oh, I'm a terrible person. I shouldn't be so egotistical. I'm really full of it. It's all about me. And then through self-criticism, you create even more of a sense of self. Self-view built around a negative image, rather just when you notice a self-centered impulse, you think, okay, that feels pretty shallow, pretty weak, not very beautiful. Okay, no more commentary necessary. That's enough. Just feel that that's not very nice. That's not very beautiful. That's a bit foolish and childish. That's it. Just to feel the painfulness of that without adding anything to it, that carries its own message, and that gets through. And so, as those impulses arise in the future, they've got less strength behind them.
Just to illustrate this exact example, I'm sorry to take the floor again, but I just wanted to share that once I was coming into an airport in Europe, and there was this, the guards, and this was in Vienna, so because I'm going to say it in German, he said there was a guard over there, and there was a monk coming out of the plane, and we were all had been sitting close, and I seemed to recognize him. I didn't know who he was. Till today, I don't know who he was. He must have been one of the senior monks in His Holiness the Dalai Lama's organization, because he was wearing those robes. I'd seen him somewhere before, I just couldn't remember. But I was, letting him go ahead. And then the guard said, Ausweis, Ausweis, which means passport. And passport, everybody, Ausweis, Ausweis. And he just kept smiling and moving on. And they went up to him and aggressively said, Ausweis! And then I was so nervous that I went to him, and he was calm, absolutely. And I said, I think they want your passport. So he said, okay. He took out the passport, he showed it to them. And that guard suddenly looked so, it was so unnecessary to be, asserting himself in that way and yelling, Ausweis. What does Ausweis mean to a person who's just got off a plane from a different part of the world? And so you're just making yourself excited and egotistic and everything, and the monk seemed to be totally unaffected, totally. And he was the calm one, he had the aura of calmness around him, and he just took out this piece of paper and showed him the passport, and suddenly everyone was quiet and everything was fine. But it just illustrated exactly what you were saying, so sorry to just come in.
That's a good example.
So, you have mentioned the right of speech, which is to speak everything is true and everything which is useful. But usually it's in normal life. This thing is sort of subjective, because sometimes we speak the truth, but it will be misinterpreted as it's a lie. We believe that it's useful, but the listener would say that it's useless. How to deal with this situation?
That's where mindfulness and wisdom comes in, because it's important to be considering to whom am I speaking? What's their background? What's their conditioning? What are they interested in? To the extent possible. So when the Buddha talks about the qualities of a well-rounded person, a sapurisa, one of those qualities is pugalanyita. Who are you talking to? Who are you with? Is it a school child, a pupil from a school? Is it a child? Is it an adult? Is it a fellow diplomat? Is it your boss? Who are you talking to? And what's their background? What are their expectations? So that quality of pugalanyita is weighing up and considering the whole of the situation, the gestalt of the situation, all the different factors that play into it. And so that as you're talking, you have to, a lot of this revolves around having to think clearly, think quickly. Okay, well this person, they've got a very strong issue about such and such. Okay, now I would like to make this point. Now, how can this point be made that will be received by that person? They won't just shut the door. So how can this be phrased? And I think to the degree possible, you think on your feet and you try to find the words. And sometimes one of the ways to most fully express yourself is to say, I don't know how to put this, because I think it will be something that doesn't agree with your perspective. But what I'd like to say is such and such. So you're acknowledging the fact that what you're likely to say is what you want to say is likely to be dismissed. But you're accounting for that dynamic and still saying things. It might be also that you intuitively realize at this moment there's no way through. This person's really in a very aggressive mood. The door is shut already. Okay, this is leave it for another time, or talk to their aide, and put it that way. And so, okay, just seriously, I mean that happens. That kind of diplomacy happens a lot in the monastery. And,
I wish the conflicting party on any international conflict would have learned this from you, because it's not just only the right speaks the truth and speaks something useful. It is also right timing and right speaker.
yes, and if you realize that this person's determined not to hear, then just in a way making small talk or just connecting with them, but not around the hot issue. But just say, here we are, we're sharing this life together, we're human beings, we can say, connect at least on this level. And so sometimes, even though we aim to be always what we say to be useful and true, sometimes what's useful is small talk. And it's just about what the weather's like, or or comparing the gardens of the place where you are with another place. So that it's at the surface level, it's innocuous. It doesn't really have any value. But below the surface, it's like, I'm here, you're there, we're here together. I'm prepared to listen to you and hear you out, and I'm being respectful for you, and my heart is open to you, even though I don't agree with your views. I do respect you completely. And so I think it's important, again, I didn't mention it earlier, but in terms of giving negative feedback or working in the world, that peace doesn't mean being passive. And sometimes speaking up and taking a stance, you're doing that not because you hate or you're aggressive, but that's the appropriate thing to do. And so I was living in California, Northern California for a long time. There's a lot of environmental protection movements and social causes that are very, very active in that area. Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley is famous as a sort of a center for those kind of social justice programs and environmental protection programs and so on. And so it's one of the ethics that is really, I feel, very important to come up in conversation a lot when I was living there, was to be able to establish in your heart, I love you completely, and I'm not going to get out of your way. I do not hate you, and I love you, and no, I'm not getting out of the road. There was a very good example was a young woman who was involved in a forest protection program called Julia Butterfly Hill, and she was part of the Earth First organization. And they were trying to protect this old growth forest. There was an old family logging company that had sold their forest holdings to a large Texan corporation, Maxim Corporation. And Maxim wanted to clear cut the forest and cash in their purchase. And so this protest group decided they would try and stop this from happening. So this young woman climbed up into 200 foot up into one of the redwood trees, and said she wasn't going to come down until they signed an agreement that they wouldn't cut the forest. She was in the tree for more than 2 years. She didn't touch the ground for over 2 years. And that's throughout her winter storms from the Pacific, the trees kind of waving in the wind. So, she could communicate by phone somewhat. And we went to visit her one time. We were on the bank of the hill. So we were at eye level, but she was 200 foot up in a tree. Talk over the phone. She was a very, very wise person, and one of the great strengths was she refused to advocate hatred for Maxim Corporation and Mr. Horowitz, who was the head of the company. And when other people in her protest group were saying, no, you've got to really let this guy have it, she said, no, I've been up in this tree for all this time. And one thing I've learned is that that's not the way to go. So, and that was ultimately successful. That they did agree to protect the forest, where a large area was say put into a long-term protection program. And there's a very beautiful photograph of her when she finally came down to the ground meeting Mr. Hurwitz. With these business suits. She's this kind of young California protester, right? And she's just reaching out and touching his heart. I don't hate you. You are not the enemy. We're in this together. And it's very, again, like the photograph of His Holiness the Dalai Lama with the soldier as a protector. Like that is a very, very clear example of that Dhammapada verse. Hatred is never conquered by hatred. And that if you are you realize any mention of this issue, any angle of approach is going to fail. Okay, let's just talk about the weather. Let's talk about last night's supper, just so that you are establishing that sense of connection. And then, oh well, Mr. Peterson, he's all right. I thought he was going to have a go at me, but no, he's quite friendly, really. And then you establish a basis of trust and relationship, and then you can move things forward. But to going back to peace, oftentimes, particularly people involved in Buddhist practice or Buddhist meditation, when we use terminology like non-attachment or letting go, it can sound like don't do anything, sort of freeze yourself, be numb, don't feel anything. And even when Ajahn Sumedha first came to teach in this country in the 1970s, people would say things to him like, well, as Buddhists, we're not supposed to have emotions, are we? We're not supposed to be involved in anything. There was a real misunderstanding of what peace is, or it's shutting down your emotions, not engaging in any activity, any kind of doing, any kind of work, any kind of effort is somehow seen as an intrusion upon peace. And no, it's not it at all. If that was the case, how could right effort, samadhi be part of the Eightfold Path? There has to be a way that we can make effort, we can make decisions, we can give direction to our lives that is completely peaceful, in accordance with peace and leading towards peace. So it's when we talk about peace, it's not passivity, it's not switching off or going numb, not feeling anything or disconnecting. But as you take action, like Julia at Butterfly Hill, taking action, you can peacefully take action and not come down from the tree. I care about your company, I care about you, and I'm not coming down from my tree till that document's been signed. And so that's just one of many, many examples. So we can take action, we can make choices that might be not in accordance with other people's wishes, but if they're coming from that purity of heart and a sense of being guided towards the quality of well-being for the maximum number of beings in the world, then I would say that's the best we can do. And if people say, you hate me, if you respected me, you get out of the way. If you had any respect, if you are wise and good, you would agree with me. You're entitled to that opinion. You can hold it that way if you like, but I do respect you. I do try to come from a place of mindfulness and wisdom, and now I don't agree with you. So and then trusting that quality of your own heart, your own citta, that you know that you're not coming from a place of aversion or reactivity. You do care, but you just don't agree with that particular position or that project or that program. And so then we can do things that people like or people dislike, but that's not the defining principle. Rather, we are making choices based upon, to the best of our ability, what looks like the most helpful way forward. And you're not wishing to cause people harm. That's not your intention. Rather, like being a dentist, who becomes a dentist to cause pain to other people? But you know that if you're a dentist, pain and discomfort and awkwardness is going to be part of what you do. But that goes with the territory. So I feel it's important to see that we can make effort, we can take action, we can work in the world in a peaceful way, and that the more that effort is free of egotistical thinking, self-centered thinking, and is guided by mindfulness and wisdom, then that is the best way in which it can lead to beneficial results. It's just gone 4:30. Is that? Are we getting to the end of our time together? I haven't memorized the program. So we'd like to offer a blessing for everyone to whatever has been beneficial from the words that I said and the discussions that we've had here. May that spread out into your lives in a complete and helpful way, and into the world to help to establish peace in the mind, in our speech, and in our work. Yatha varivaha pura paripurinti sagarang evam eva hito dinang etanang upakapati ichitang patitang tumang kitam eva samichato sabe parendu sankapha chando panmaraso yata manicho tiraso yata Amaro Vina Sadhu Mate Bhavadvandarayo Sukirikayuko Bhava Abhivadanasirisa Nichang Vadapachadino Chataro Brahma Vadanti Ayurvano Sukham Alam